You know, it's interesting if you read Sundar Singh's writings on the Maharishi of Kailash. The Maharishi of Kailash is this immortal guy that's 450 years old, right? And he's appeared to many Christians. Ian Clayton is a good friend of his. He's appeared to Bobby Connor. He's appeared to many people, right? When the Maharishi spent time with Sundar Singh, he told Sundar Singh that certain plants and seeds and berries contained all you need to live. He lives on a minimal diet.
Wow.
And I believe one of the big lies that we've been sold is how much we need to eat.
Interesting.
I think we're going to find out, and this already stacking up, isn't it, with research, that if you have a calorie restricted diet, you live much longer and healthier. But we're told that these are the recommended calories, these are the recommended portions.
Right.
So part of what we're going to have to shift on...
Here's your standard.
Yeah,
you have to do this to live.
And you eat these big plates of food because you fear starvation because of a genetic record.
That's right.
So there's no threat of you starving, but your genetic record from your ancestors remembers when you had to eat anything you could find. If you killed a deer, eat the whole thing because you don't know when you're going to eat again. Now they're going to, a Hong Kong buffet. I was in Hong Kong buffet, right?
Come on, man.
Dude, I was in there. And
Hong Kong buffet.
I'm not trying to be rude,
Yes.
but there was some people, their family, that pretty much spent all day there.
Yeah.
And they munched their way through the whole thing.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Yeah.
For like $6, right?
Yeah, come on.
Now, I'm all for celebration of food, right?
Arun looks like he's about to throw up.
Yeah.
It's like, gross.
But the point I'm making is, what makes a person over being triggered by genetic memory? That's all it is. Because I found when I travel, the more I'm in the spirit, the smaller my portions get. And I've had many trips where I eat like a handful of food literally all day. But if I eat more than that, I lose my energy. And the first time I made that mistake, I was full of energy in Canada, full of life, supernatural life. And they said, let's go for lunch. You must be tired. You must be hungry. I went along with it. I had this soup. I ate one mouthful and I was full and I felt amazing. The Lord says, you had enough. But out of politeness, I kept eating.
Oh, wow.
And I crashed out of the energy system that I was in. So I think it's possible for us to live off such a small amount of resources in terms of food when we're in Him, when we move in Him, when we live in Him. And I think that's the challenge, is moving towards free energy.
So good. Yep.
Less eating. Honestly, you see people in meetings, they're worried because they need to get home for dinner because they've been triggered by someone else's experience. It's not even their experience.
Right.
Because honestly, if they stayed all day, they wouldn't suffer any harm.
That's right.
They would probably lose a bit weight and their lifespan would expand a bit, So, we have to allow God to deal with genetic triggers. And this is what I've shown by Enoch. Enoch, it's really interesting, has got no triggers.
Oh, wow.
He's taken his body fully through the flame and it's been recalibrated so that there's no spot or wrinkle in the genetics. So, Enoch talked to me about one of the big truths for our day is, we'll repair the world, but says we'll also heal the desolation of generations.
Wow.
Now, I pondered that for a long time until they showed me what it meant, that genetics is generations. So, like Noah was pure in his genetics, right? It says he was pure in his generations. Right. If you read like the Book of Jubilees and other books, when Noah was born, God had done a genetic number on him because he was born shining and he could talk. That's in their mythology. Okay. But I do think there's some truth in it. I think God intervened on a genetic level, and I think it says, as in the days of Noah, shall be at the coming of the Son of Man, right? Now, there's different views about whether that meant 80, 70 or the future. But I just want to propose this, that if it is still a future thing, you've got Enoch was phasing in and out in the days of Noah. He was there at the birth. He prophesied over him, all sorts, Well, he came after the birth because his dad went up on a mountain, cried out for Enoch because there was something unusual about Noah. Enoch came and prophesied over Noah. So the days of Noah are the days where you've got someone moving through dimensions, this immortal, and you've got this other baby that's got a new genetics. So I think they're patterns. They're patterns of concepts that God wants to release upon the earth. And I think when you look at the Maharishi of Kailash and others that are still alive. How is he still alive 450 years on? You know, I was ministering with Dr. Obaniah, Dr. O, people call him, in Arizona, and he'd just come from Chicago, and he said while he was there, 2 people came up to him in the street that were 200 years old. They said, we're 200 years old, we're remaining here.
Wow.
And he spent some time talking to them. Now, you might think that's an isolated story, but it's not. What we're talking about here is green room talk. Because, you know, I've been around the prophets. They all have these kind of experiences.
That's right.
But what's happening now is the taboo's breaking. And we're starting to talk openly.
That's good. Yeah.
About what's been talked about for 50 years.
That's right.
I've been in green room conversations,
That's
and
true.
they always say, "Oh, we won't talk about that tonight. We won't talk about that tonight."
Yeah.
And I'll be like, "Oh, come on." You know, I spent nearly 2 hours talking to Bobby Connor over lunch when I was in Morning Star about immortality.
Wow.
And he was just sharing incredible stuff. He says, I completely believe you can live as long as you want, he said. And he is evidence of it, because he had a heart attack on an aeroplane with Paul Keith Davis. I think they had to land in Singapore. And it's a funny story, because they went to get a doctor, and the guy came along, and they said, we'll get you the best doctor. And they brought this guy that does acupuncture. So Paul Keith walks in the room, and they're doing acupuncture on Bobby. And he was going, we need a real doctor. So anyway, he had
I
to
can
have...
see him. Ow! Ow! Now I tell you
This isn't helping.
Hey!
Yeah, so Bobby actually had like a covenant with God, where God said, I'll renew you.
Wow.
And he did, because he went to doctors and got it verified. And it's a crazy story. But they did... He went up to the doctors and said, write this down. Bobby Connor is healthier than an athlete.
Perfect.
And
I've heard that.
Yeah.
That's
Perfect.
crazy.
And
Yes.
you know, the outcome of it was the doctor didn't believe him, but when they did tests, after 3 days, he scored better than the Olympic team that they tested.
Isn't that crazy?
And they put cameras in him and everything.
That's awesome.
And they said, you have the insides of like a 20-something-year-old. So I was talking to Bobby about this, and Bobby said, yeah, I believe I'm still going to be preaching at 120. Now, we got to start believing for greater things, because, you know, it says with God, all things are possible.
That's right.
I think we've made it too small.
Totally.
All our vision is right now is we can heal the sick, speak in tongues, prophesy, and try and raise the dead. But that has to change.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And the only way I feel is going to change is by an aggressive pursuit of being in union,
That's good. Yeah.
seamless union with God.